and a half. Thank you, Kelly. As Kelly said, the past week and a half, we have been inundated with rain. We've had flood watches and flood warnings. We've had tornado watches, and that's just within the past week and a half. So we know things that are coming, but we need to be ready to hit them head on and to be headstrong with them. So as we talk about kind of the why going into this topic, I think it's pretty obvious. We know that natural disasters aren't something that we can necessarily outrun, but there is something that we can possibly outplan. And so as long as we have a game plan coming into each situation, we're always going to be better off. So we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves an upper hand and giving ourselves the best foot possible to go into any potential natural disaster. And so throughout this evening's kind of webinar and presentation, we're going to show you a couple of different ways that you can be prepared, because at the Women's Resource, we truly believe that there are different methods and different modalities that work for different people and different styles. So we don't just want to give you one way of doing something and saying go forth and make it happen. We've got a couple of options of what preparedness looks like. That way you can really take it and cater it and make it something that's going to be realistic for you, and that will work for you and your family and your loved ones. So the reason why we're focusing on planning ahead, as Kelly said, one, first and foremost, it'll be much harder to plan in the thick of things, in the heat of the moment. And then 9 times out of 10, if we're planning on the opposite end after something's happened, we're usually in a state of crisis. So chances are we're not really in that mindset to start planning because we're trying to fix. So we really want to make sure we're looking at planning ahead, because when we start planning ahead, it can help us reduce physical, mental, emotional, and financial stress. So we already have enough stressors on a day-to-day basis. We don't need to add natural disaster stressors to that list of ongoing stressors if we can avoid it. So if you didn't know, planning ahead for natural disasters can actually help prevent incurring debt. Because again, if a natural disaster happens and if you don't have any money saved aside or built up, a lot of times we can go into a little bit of debt because we're trying to resolve something that's happened or an emergency expense that happened as a result of a natural disaster. So just feeding into that point of why we really want to focus tonight on planning ahead and really getting this under control before it kind of strong arms us a little bit and we find ourselves on the other side of things. So as I said, financial preparation looks different for everyone. So we're going to cover those different ways that financial preparation could look like for you. And then I also want to point out, in case you didn't know, most cities actually have an entire natural disaster or disaster preparedness plan. So if Kelly, if you don't mind, if you can provide the link to the guides, it'll be in our footnote section on this slide. But the city of Houston actually has an entire page that is dedicated to various disaster preparedness guides. So even if it's not just specific to a natural disaster that we're focusing on tonight, you can still go onto their website and see what the city of Houston preparedness guides look like and what they kind of provide, or what tips and suggestions they have as well for citywide methods. So just keeping that in mind, exactly whatever the city is doing, maybe not to a T, but keeping some of those elements in mind, what the city of Houston is doing to protect the entire city and county that we live within are things that we can also replicate to protect ourselves, to protect our households, our finances, and our loved ones. So I just want to start off with that note, and then I'll pass it over to Kelly to see if you have anything to add before we get into our agenda today.
I just wanted to say, I love the illustration and the analogy about cities and how cities really prepare for disasters. We like, in the Women's Resource, we like to talk about how companies do the same thing. You know, companies are like CEOs, they have an entire financial plan to run their business. And we like to draw the analogy that, you know, as women, we can do the same thing with our finances. We can have an entire financial plan to support our finances, to make sure that our finances are ship-shape. And I like the analogy that cities do the same thing when they're preparing for disasters, and that we can do the same thing as individuals. We can outline a financial plan, have it there, ready to go. We can have things already in motion, so that way when we hear on the news or we see on social media that we've got something brewing in the Gulf, or something else that may be coming our way, we feel, you know, good about the plan that we have in place. So I love that illustration. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, so let's take a peek at our agenda so you can see what exactly we have lined up for this evening. So you can see here, we've covered our welcomes and introductions. Hello, welcome, happy you're joining us. Kelly and Ashley, right in front of you, coming to you live. Next, we're going to talk about creating an emergency savings, what that looks like, what a couple of recommendations are, and how you can start planning ahead for those recommendations, and then ways to avoid financial stressors specific to natural disasters. After that, we're going to turn to planning ahead for natural disasters, so getting to the element of getting ahead of the curve that we've been talking about so far this evening. And then we're going to look at protecting your assets through different means of insurance. Then we're going to talk about where we can go during a natural disaster. So this means physically where we can go as individuals, where we can take our loved ones, our family members, our pets, whoever it may be in the event of a natural disaster. And then we're going to look at financial coaching for disasters. So this is getting a little bit more into the piece that we can do here and now starting today. And then we're also wanting to share a couple of basic tips and resources, because who doesn't love a couple of helpful resources that they can turn to? And then we're going to wrap up this evening with Q&A. We do have a raffle, a lovely raffle that Emily has put together, and she'll show off later this evening, and then we'll go ahead and adjourn. So throughout that, it sounds like a lot, but we definitely want to have time for discussion. So we do have planned and intentional moments where we would love to hear from you and just kind of brainstorm together around what this looks like for us as individuals, what it looks like for our households, and what it looks like for us as collectives coming into this space and sharing this conversation and this moment. All right, so first up, let's look at what it means to create an emergency savings plan and how it can potentially help us avoid some financial stressors. So rule of thumb is it's best to have, or recommended to have, at least $500 saved aside for general emergencies. So this is anything and everything from a flat tire to maybe a leak to a busted pipe to something that could come up with a natural disaster. So starting with the baseline of $500 is going to ideally be that sweet spot where it can help you cover most kind of minor emergencies that just come up out of the blue. Again, you hit a pothole, we're in the city of Houston, flat tire, boom. A $500 savings can easily help you take care of that, assuming it was just one tire and not multiple. But I hope you get the picture where it can help you cover most general emergencies. So now the question we pose on here is, what could you do after you have the $500 saved? Well, since we're talking about natural disaster preparedness, one recommendation is maybe you can create or set aside a separate savings account that you can dedicate specifically to saving for natural disasters and other emergencies that may be similar to that. So a lot of times people will kind of hit their goal or hit their marker when it comes to savings, and then they're like, well, now what? Well, you can save for other goals. For some of our clients, it's saving for other goals like going back to school, purchasing a house, in addition to having a set savings for emergencies. But in this case, we're going to pose it in having savings that's specific to natural disasters. So that's one thing you can do. And now you have that baseline ideal in mind of reaching that initial goal of $500. And then you can start achieving a secondary goal when it comes to your savings. The next thing that we have on this slide is, when planning for a natural disaster, you'll want to think about who you're caring for during a natural disaster. So I know we already are probably coming into the space knowing that it's not just me, myself, and I. If you live in a home with loved ones, think about your spouse, any children or kids or grandchildren in the household, any extended family members that you may be living with. Think about your mother, your father, any siblings, potential neighbors, any pets. So as you're thinking about a potential natural disaster and who you're planning for, just make sure you keep that lens in mind of, okay, if I'm planning for this, I need to make sure I'm scoping or scaling it out enough so that it covers everyone that I'm looking to hopefully, flee with or stay with or prepare for and prepare with. So just keeping in mind who you're planning for in the event of a natural disaster. The next thing we want to look at is, this is that opportunity for discussion. So I want to open it to you all just to have a moment for us to brainstorm some common costs that could possibly incur during the time of a disaster. So as you're thinking of a natural disaster, what are some ticket items, it could be big or small, that come to mind? And you can feel free to either unmute yourself or share your thoughts in the chat box.
Okay, so this is Crystal.
Yes,
And
Crystal.
my mother is handicapped, so she's in a wheelchair. And when the snow thing came, we have to have some form of heat, because it can affect her health and could be fatal for her. So the only form of heat that we have without electricity, what I call the country, but Texas, we had to have a generator. So she had a friend who had extra. He has a couple houses and brought it over, and we had a generator. And then when it was over, we priced them, and they're through the roof at that point because of what Texas went through.
Yeah.
Price go through the roof, and it's not financially wise to buy one in that kind of price range. So anyway, something like that.
Yeah, so an additional power source or power supply is definitely a common cost item when we're talking about natural disasters, and that's a great real life example. Would anyone else care to share?
And Ashley, we have a number of things in the chat. So as we're waiting for anybody who wants to chime in audibly, I can read out some of these ideas that came through the chat. So we have hotel expense, transportation. We have a gas for the car, right? Because usually if there's a disaster that's impending, then we're told to fill up our gas tanks. Not only just if we're planning to drive, but just to have them full if needed. Transportation, food, travel expenses in general, water, medication, repairs to your vehicle or to your house, phone charger that is solar powered.
Yes, yes. So you all are hitting the nail on the head. You all came with your natural disaster cap on, that's for sure. We actually have a list of things that we want to share as well, and you all kind of knocked out a lot of them from our list. So I'll go ahead and read, and then we can kind of cross compare our lists. But we have on here groceries. So groceries, food, canned goods, of course, you want to make sure we can eat. Lost income. So if your business shuts down or if your spouse loses their job throughout the case or throughout the time of the natural disaster, you want to make sure that you can consider for lost income, hotel expenses, which someone mentioned, where you're going to be staying at, gas tanks, someone mentioned that, making sure you fill up your vehicle in case you're traveling or needing to get out of the city or the county, disaster needs such as candles, flashlights, batteries, kind of going back to what Crystal said, extra energy supplies, medicine that could maybe need to be replaced, or if you need to get additional medicine because you may be away for a while, sandbags if you're staying, or even if you want to just waterproof your house and if you are leaving, tarps to put over your houses. Someone did mention home repairs as well. Car repairs that was mentioned, and then smoke alarms. So in case anyone doesn't know, TDI, or the Texas Department of Insurance, actually has a list of programs, and it's a pretty long list, but they have a list of programs where you can actually be eligible to request a free smoke detector. So Kelly, if you don't mind sharing that in the chat, and you can go through that list, you can see what some of the requirements are. Some of them do have requirements, others do not. But if that's something you'd be interested in, take full advantage of it. And it is something that is recommended as we're planning and looking ahead for natural disasters. Thank you all so much for sharing. Again, those were wonderful recommendations. You hit most of our list, if not over half of it. But going on to the next section that's on this PowerPoint is the next thing you want to think about is deciding how much we're going to need to save. So as we're talking about saving, as I mentioned earlier, the recommended amount is trying to save at least up to that $500 amount. So you can start setting your goals, whether it's 500 or a different amount, by dividing that number by 12. So dividing it by 12 is going to give you an idea of how much you need to save weekly to meet this amount by the end of the year. So if I'm saying I need to start my baseline at 500 because I don't have $500 saved for an emergency, then I would just divide 500 by 12, and then I can see, okay, I need to start by saving $42 a month. And your starting place could be higher, it could be lower. It's anything that's realistic and comfortable and within your means to be able to save that amount. So if you're thinking, Ashley, I've already got 500 covered, I need to increase my goal, increase it, divide it by 12, and see if that monthly amount is realistic for you. If you're thinking, Ashley, I'm not even at the 500, then take that other amount, again, divide it by 12, and then see if that's a realistic amount for you to hit. And then the last thing I want to hit on here is thinking about how you're going to keep or track or manage your savings, and then how you're going to possibly find wiggle room throughout your savings. So as we're looking at different options of keeping or tracking our savings, we talk a lot about savings in other classes and other opportunities that we provide, but I'll quickly just list a few. So if it's going to be in your checkings account, your savings account, if you'll use a Smarty Pig account, which is an external bank account that you can link, well, an external account that you can link your bank account to, and it'll allow you to reach certain saving goals that you set. And you can also get certain rewards for being a part of that opportunity. Or if you have a savings jar where you just put all your change into, think about the best way that makes the most sense for you and is, again, realistic for you as you're thinking about saving. And then also think about how you're going to access these funds. So if you have it in an account that it takes 2 or 3 days to withdraw and then receive that money for, is that going to be realistic in the event of a natural disaster? Or are you going to need to have an account that may be more readily available or readily accessible in the event that, boom, something happens and now I need to be able to access this money pretty quickly? So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to go ahead and kick us off with different ways to prepare.
Great. All right. Show of hands. How many people have purchased items right before a storm that they know they could have spent less money on if they had purchased them ahead of time? And I will raise my hand on that one for sure. I can think of a few things that I feel like I have spent money on and I'm like, I should have had this. Why did I not have this before? So let's just chat about what we need to have in order to prepare for a disaster. So we have talked about like a bunch of the expenses that we're going to maybe incur when we go through times of natural disaster. But when we're thinking specifically about preparation, let's talk about what we're going to need and then kind of talk about it from a financial planning perspective. So experts agree that it is important, especially here on the Texas Gulf Coast, that we have two things. We have what's called a go bag, and we have what's called a stay box. And I'm sure you guys can all relate to these two items that are needed. So let's just break them down. So a go bag is when you have made the decision to leave. You know that you either aren't safe where you are, or there's a better place for you to be during this time of disaster. So you need to have things prepared in order to take with you that are going to help you wherever it is that you go. So inside the go bag, some items that would be beneficial for you to have would be important documents, maps of anywhere you need to go, possibly a medication list, your phone and phone charger, portable radio, flashlight, batteries. That's a flashlight was one of the things that I can vividly remember spending. I went to a convenience store because there were no flashlights anywhere. So I ended up spending so much money for a flashlight at a convenience store. Batteries, first aid kit, a portable computer or maybe tablet, small bills. So $1 bills, $5 bills would be helpful. And one of the reasons why you want to have small bills is because if the natural disaster is happening around you and power has been lost around your community or in the city, then ATMs might not be working. So you might not be able to access cash. So to have small bills would be helpful. If you own a pet, then make sure you have certain pet items with you. Also bottled water, snacks. If you are planning ahead, a toothpaste, toothbrush, those are things that you can go ahead and buy. You can get those from the dollar store, put them in your to-go bag. An escape tool for your car. So if you're in a situation where your car is flooding, that's just good to have in your car probably at all times living here in Houston. And then ponchos. So all of those would be items that would be helpful for a go bag. Yes, Patty, you're right. Feminine products definitely helpful for the go bag. I totally forgot about those. If anybody else has any ideas for a go bag, I'd love to hear them. You can put them in the chat. And then the stay box. So the stay box is when you've decided, or maybe the news is telling us we need to hunker down, we need to stay, they don't want us necessarily all heading out of town. And so things that you may want to put in your stay box might include water. Experts say that we need to have 3 gallons of water per person for drinking and for washing. So as we all can relate in the winter storm, most of us lost water. So to have water available for washing dishes, brushing teeth, for drinking was very helpful. Ziploc bags, also for washing or for keeping foods fresh, non-perishable foods, trash bags, flashlights and batteries again, toilet paper, paper towels, candles. And I just have a note that if you're keeping your stay box in the garage or in your attic, just maybe not put your candles there. In our Texas heat, they'll melt. Lighter and matches, and it's advisable to put your matches in a Ziploc bag in case you are experiencing a flood. That way they don't get wet. Any kind of rain gear, maybe a stuffed animal or a toy if you have kids, and then any pet items that you might need. So these are all items that you may want to plan for in your stay box. Any other ideas for either the go box or the stay box, the go bag or the stay box? Have canned food, V8. Yep, V8 would be good. Anything else? Portable radio, yes. Great. All right. So let's talk about where you're going to keep these items. So that's another thing. You know, some of us don't have room, you know, in our homes for a lot of extra stuff. So that's just something you may want to think about. In the raffle that we have for our lucky winner today, we've packaged everything in a nice compact, like Tupperware, big Tupperware containers. That's something that maybe you could think about. But just to be mindful, all of this is about mindfulness and intentionality. So just, you know, wanted to plant that seed to just be thinking about where you're going to keep, where you're going to store these items. Because the next thing I want to talk about is, from a financial planning perspective, getting all of these things together now, starting now, I guess I should say. I had you raise your hands if you have ever purchased an item that was more expensive because you were purchasing right before a disaster. And so our advice for you today is to start this process now to gather these items. Now we are going into the hurricane season, so I'm not just saying it, not just saying to start now because we have hurricane season coming up, but rather so that it doesn't break your budget. When we were headed into the winter storm, I was not 100% prepared for the winter storm. So when I heard some of these lessons being presented from a disaster response situation, really hit me that I could have saved a lot of money if I had every month been looking at a list and saying, okay, this month I'm going to buy my flashlights and my batteries. Next month I'm going to buy, you know, I'm going to buy my candles and my lighter and my matches and my Ziploc bags. And every month I just pick a few items that I know I can purchase and buy them in places like, you know, the dollar store or the grocery store or Walmart, where I can get them, you know, at the cheapest rate, and start planning for them on a monthly basis, just kind of build it into my budget. So then that way, when the disaster comes, I'm ready and I'm not having to purchase anything at a higher price. And I'm also not having to break my budget right before the disaster, where I'm putting all of those expenses into one monthly budget. Because I know for me to add all of those things to the month of February, I wasn't expecting to do that. So I had built my February budget, but I didn't have a category for disasters. So I ended up spending more money than I had planned to during the month of February. And I'm sure some of you can probably relate to that. So I want to get you thinking about on a monthly basis, just picking a few things off your list that you can purchase and then put them, you know, in a box or to-go bag. And you can utilize community resources also, like your local food pantry to gather items, or, you know, you can borrow items or, you know, ask if, you know, neighbors or community members have items that you might need. So there's a lot of different ways that you can look to save on the items that you might need in your to-go bag or your stay box. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is protecting our assets with insurance. So the whole concept of our event tonight is all about preparation. So we're not going to talk a lot about like the response to disasters, but we really want to get everybody thinking about ways that we can really be preparing financially for disasters. So there are four 5 different kinds of insurance out there that can help us during times of disaster.
To Marcia and Carol.
So the first one is home insurance. So home insurance can really help us when we are experiencing a disaster such as a hurricane, maybe a severe storm that produces hail damage, tornadoes. We don't have wildfires, but if anybody's watching from California, wildfires, can also be protected with home insurance. So home insurance can help protect our personal belongings, our home, and other items on our property in case of damage or complete destruction. It's likely if you have home insurance that you will have to pay a deductible, but then your insurance company will be likely to cover the remainder of your policy limit. So that can help a lot financially when you are, experiencing any kind of damage on your home. I see some things coming in the chat. I'm going to just pause real quick. Ashley, is there anything, any questions or anything that's come up in the chat that needs to be addressed?
Yes, so Camille actually just shared a really cool resource. She said that there is a calendar provided by Harris County that showed which items to buy each month. So if anyone stumbles upon that calendar, it sounds like a pretty cool resource.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Camille. Okay, good. I'm going to continue on with insurance. Oh, unless there's something else, Ashley.
Nope, we're good. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. What was that resource you mentioned? I'm sorry. What was that resource you mentioned?
It is a calendar that has monthly what items to purchase, and it was shared out by Harris County.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so in addition to home insurance, there's also renter's insurance. Typically, renter's insurance policies cover 3 types of coverage. So they would cover personal property. They can cover loss of use. So if you have to move out of your rental property and move somewhere else for a time being, and then they can cover personal liability, which protects you if somebody is injured at your home or the home that you're renting. So when the same is true for renter's insurance and home insurance. When buying any type of insurance, you want to shop around to get the best price. You want to ask about the deductible because the deductible is going to be what's going to come out of your pocket when you need to tap into that insurance. What's covered by the insurance and how much insurance you may need to cover your home and your belongings. So these are good questions that you want to ask, and you definitely want to shop around so you can get the best price. The next thing I wanted to mention was the tip to create either a home inventory of the items in your home, or to take pictures and video of things that are in your home. And the reason to do this is to make sure that if you are making an insurance claim when you've had a disaster damage your property or damage your belongings, is that you can show the insurance adjuster when making that claim, what was either lost or what was damaged. So there are, if you Google home inventory during disaster, you can get some ideas of how to create a home inventory, which is basically just a list of all the things in your home. They recommend starting with the bigger items first, of course, because it can be a little overwhelming to think about recording everything in our home, and just to go one room at a time. But I really liked the example of actually taking videos of the rooms in your home, experts say that there are insurance companies that will take those videos when making claims. So I like that idea. It is important if you are, creating inventories or you're doing videos, making videos of your home, to keep those lists or those videos in the cloud, because if your home is damaged and your computer, is damaged, then those videos and inventories will be safe on the web. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention for anybody who is renting that if you are concerned about your rights as a renter, then you can go to Lone Star Legal Aid, and they can help you as a renter to make sure that your rights are being listened to by your landlord. And there's a whole host of renters' rights. We could probably have an entire webinar on renters' rights when it comes to times of disaster. But I did want to mention Lone Star Legal Aid, and I'll put it in the chat as a resource if you if you do feel like there you're going through a disaster and your rights as a renter
So
are
this is
not
like
being
what
are
to
not
do
being
when there's an emergency.
are
It's really
being listened
important.
to.
It's all
All right, great. So the next one is flood insurance. This is a big one here, especially as we go into the summer months. Flood insurance is actually separate from home insurance. In addition, flood damage is not covered by homeowners or renters insurance policies. So it's an entirely separate expense. You do have to actually purchase home flood insurance separately. And then if you do have flood damage, then it is not covered by your homeowners or renters insurance policies. So during Hurricane Harvey, 80% of homes that flooded did not have flood insurance. Texas doesn't require homeowners to purchase flood insurance, but if your property is actually in a high-risk flood zone, then your lender may require that you purchase that flood insurance. The cost of flood insurance varies, so it can range from around $500 to $700 per year. And it really kind of depends on your flood risk, depending upon where your home is located, the value of your home, and then the amount of your deductible. One important note to make about flood insurance is that if you're thinking of purchasing flood insurance, there is usually a 30-day waiting period before it kicks in. So for instance, it's May 25th right now. And if you were to, let's say a hurricane comes on June 15th, you were to sign up for flood insurance on June 7th, then you actually would not be covered under flood insurance because of that 30-day waiting period. So if you're thinking about getting flood insurance, don't wait. If you're sure that that's something you're going to do, because you want to make sure that you're covered, and it'll take 30 days for that to kick in. Lastly, with flood insurance, I just want to make the point that FEMA assistance, which is in addition to flood insurance, is only meant to repair a home back to minimal living conditions. So you can still receive FEMA assistance after a flood, but the FEMA assistance is only going to repair your home to minimal living conditions. The flood insurance is what is going to protect your entire home and help you to be able to get your home back to what it was. All right, the other type of insurance related to hurricanes is wind insurance. So, or what's also called hurricane coverage, which is usually not something that we typically hear of unless you live in a coastal county. So if you live down in the Galveston area or maybe Pearland area, you probably are familiar with wind insurance. If you own a home, you may be required by your lender to purchase wind insurance. And then lastly, car insurance. So there's a few different kinds of car insurance. Most states require, in Texas, we require that individuals have auto liability coverage on your car, which pays for the cost of the other driver's injuries or property damage if you were at fault for a collision. Comprehensive car insurance is often optional, but pays for losses beyond that of a collision with another car. So for instance, if there were a natural disaster, which we're talking about tonight, then if you had comprehensive car insurance, then you would be covered in the event of a flood or hailstorm. And I've actually gone through this myself. I ironically was up in Dallas during a very heavy storm, attending an event, and I had my car in a parking lot. I was not near my car, but my car ended up getting flooded in this weird rain event, and was able, and because I had comprehensive car insurance, I was able to replace my car. So we experience this a lot here in Houston. They're always saying, turn around, don't drown. I'll say turn around, don't drown, and buy car insurance, comprehensive car insurance. So that way, if you do find that your car experiences a flood, then you can get it back. All right, again, be sure to shop around, ask about discounts, ask lots of questions to understand what specifically is going to be covered, how much the policy is going to cost you per month, and how much the deductible will be for different situations. You can choose your deductible amount usually. It can range from maybe $250 to $1,500 when you're selecting your policy. But generally, if you have a lower deductible, then you're going to have a higher premium and vice versa. Lastly, when it comes to car insurance, I just want to say that many insurance policies do have a coverage limit. that's equal to the current value of your car. And this is one reason why it's really important that you don't owe more money on your car than your car is actually worth. And we talk about this in class 6 when we talk about being upside down on your car loan. So if you haven't taken our class 6, I encourage you to check it out so you can learn about upside down car loans. And then if you do experience a disaster, you should apply for FEMA assistance as soon as possible. And FEMA can provide rental assistance for people who are displaced by a disaster. All right, those are all my protections for your assets.
We did get a question, Kelly. So going back to the not the audit, the inventory of your house, taking stock, is there a recommendation on the frequency of that?
I don't know. I'm not sure that I've read anything about the recommendations for how frequent. I would say to just start by doing it. And then if you as you purchase maybe large items, add them to the list. Like large, more expensive items, yeah, add them to the list.
Yeah, on an as needed basis. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about where we can go physically in the event of a natural disaster. So one, we always recommend building your network in case of emergencies and building your network in general, of course, but especially for different events, different emergencies where you may need to go out of the city, of the county, possibly out of the state to reside with someone else. So if you have family or friends or loved ones who maybe live in Dallas, in Austin, San Antonio, those are great local areas. If you have loved ones who live outside of the state, California, Seattle, wherever it may be, just make sure you're building that network. And then of course, starting by having that conversation with them. Ask them if in the event that you need to leave your home to go reside with them for a short period of time, if that's okay with them. And then start having the conversation of what that looks like. And then of course, something I mentioned earlier, don't forget the people that you're caring for. So make sure that the individual knows or the family knows that you may be bringing yourself, your husband, your wife, siblings, children, grandparents, parents, or possibly pets. So just making sure you have that game plan, because again, the name of the game is planning ahead. Make sure that you don't get caught up in the heat of the moment and they're trying to scramble and call different people and see where you can go. So just making sure you're taking care of things on the front end, so that way, if anything happens, you'll already have a plan in place and know where to go and what to do. Outside of your immediate network, another tip or suggestion, of course, that we all may be familiar with, is staying at a hotel. So you can always stay at a hotel in the event that you cannot stay within your house or you need to go somewhere else. One tip I do want to point out is that you don't actually need a credit card for most hotels, because most of them will actually allow guests to utilize their debit card or even a prepaid card. However, the one caveat with that is that hotels will oftentimes place a charge on that account ahead of time to make sure that they can hold the room for that individual. So just make sure you talk to the hotel, see what that charge is, and then how long it'll take for that charge to be released so that you can receive those funds again. And just making sure that you have that money readily available and it's not going to cause a strain if that's the money that you need for your emergency and to purchase other items. So just knowing that that's always an option, but also knowing some of the other conditions that can come with that option. All right, Kelly, you want to take it over with financial coaching?
Yes. All right. So if you're, on this call today and you're thinking, this sounds really great, but I really could use some support with this. I want to create a plan, but I have a couple places I think I want to start, but I want to be either held accountable or I want to, I just want to talk with somebody about my plan. Then we have financial coaches, 2 financial coaches on staff, Lisa Williams, who I think is on this call, and Shan Williams, who are ready and willing to help you to create a disaster financial plan. So what is a disaster financial plan? So we've got it up here on your screen. We can talk to you about your monthly budget. As Ashley mentioned, a lot of preparing for a disaster comes down to deciding what your savings goal is going to be. How much do you want to have saved for times of disaster? And she talked about the monthly budget and dividing that number by 12 and then putting that into your budget. So if you're feeling like I don't even have a budget yet, then our financial coaches can help you set up a monthly budget and make sure that you have set some realistic savings goals for you. Also, we have a lot of resources here at the Women's Resource. So we'd love to pass along any resources that we have, that could be a benefit to you when you're putting together your disaster financial plan. And then if you have questions around insurance needs, we are not, insurance experts, but we can help you to talk through, any decisions that you're trying to make when it comes to insurance, and then provide some resources too around any insurance decisions that you're planning to make.
All right, so hopefully at this point your gears are kind of turning. You may be thinking, all right, I need to get a game plan in place because Kelly is right. I have spent X amount of dollars in the heat of the moment when I could have spent a little bit less, or I do need to get ahead of the game and start planning ahead. So hopefully your gears are turning. And as you're thinking about really preparing yourself for the event of a natural disaster, I just want to go ahead and provide a couple of additional tips for you to keep in mind as you're planning, because these are really going to help you throughout the planning process. So the first thing I want to mention as a tip is think about when we typically experience disasters. So for those of us living in Houston, maybe living in Texas, along with Kelly and myself, hurricane season is a big one for us down here. So myself and Kelly, typically plan a lot of our disaster preparedness around hurricane season. So if you live elsewhere, think about the type of disasters that frequent your area of where you live and when they typically happen or take place. Another one for us living in Texas that we may need to be aware of now may be freezes. So think about when those happen and how you can plan around them instead of planning in them. The next tip I want to share is be aware of variable rate electricity plans. So this was something that we saw a lot of people having issues with and kind of taking stock with again during the winter freeze. So variable rate electricity plans just means that the cost of electricity can be determined by the market value and other factors that are considered by the energy supplier. So since the market cost of electricity can change frequently, that means that your cost or your rates can also fluctuate up and down. This can be a good thing when the market prices drop, but it can also be a bad thing when market prices rise. And during the winter storm, we did see a lot of those market prices not just rise, but skyrocket. And so it kind of put a lot of people in a bit of a hole. So just knowing upfront the risks that are associated with some of these opportunities before you're jumping into them, because I know otherwise, given other normal circumstances, variable rate was a very appealing option or plan for other people, but just being aware of some of the consequences that may not be so minor that can have big or large impacts in the event of a natural disaster. The next tip I want to share is having extra medication and additional power supplies. So I know we talked about power supplies earlier, and again, Crystal shared a wonderful example of something that happened to someone near and dear to her, and how they kind of had to navigate that process. So making sure that you're just being aware of and mindful of if you or anyone you know or anyone in your care network or care system needs the use or needs the affordability of having readily available energy supplied to them, just making sure you have a game plan to allow you to have an additional power supply or a generator. So again, going back to the savings goal, if your savings goal is like, Ashley, it's not the 500, it's saving up to get myself a generator, then make that your savings goal, divide it by 12 and start from there. And then again, having additional medication. So if you or anyone in your care plan does take regular medication, making sure that you're stocked up on it. So if you know that a natural disaster is coming up, going to your pharmacist and saying, hey, we're going to be out of town, either just out of town planning a trip, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, or because we know that there's a tropical depression forming, so we're going to go to our emergency contact and maybe reside with them for a couple of days, just making sure you're planning ahead for that. And that includes having medication available if need be. And then the last thing I want to mention in terms of tips is just reduce stress by planning ahead. That is the theme of tonight's event. All of this is really done and talked about with the overall intention of reducing that stress, because again, when we are in the thick of things, we are already in a state of crisis. We're already trying to figure out where things end and begin. So if we can reduce even a fraction of the stress that we may be experiencing just by having some things planned ahead, it's going to help alleviate the situation so much more than if we didn't take the time to plan those things out. So as you may be looking for additional resources, again, I am a resource gal, so I want to pass on the wealth of knowledge as well. But if you're planning and thinking, I want a little bit more information, or I want something a little specific for something else, we do have a couple of resources on here that I want to share with you. So if you're unfamiliar with 211, 211 is our Texas hotline, and they do provide disaster relief, emergency assistance registry. So they're actually partnered with STEER, which is the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. And you can go through either the 211 website or through the STEER website, and you can sign up for registry so that in the event of a natural disaster or any general emergencies, they can actually help with assistance evacuation. And then also 211 helps with Houston disaster preparedness guides as well. The next resource on here that I want to talk about and share is 311, which is not for emergencies. So 211 is more so for emergencies. 311 is not for emergencies. Do not call them in the event of emergency taking place. Instead, you can call them if you need to report debris, flooding, if a tree fell in, or report any damages to your house if water came in, or again, tree fell, which is one, debris and damage to your property, or something happened with your car and it got water damage. You can report all of those related responses to 311. And then the last resource I want to share on here is Alert Houston. So Alert Houston does provide timely information during actual emergencies and natural disasters. So if you ever find yourself kind of in a pickle or bind and you're not exactly sure where to find the most up-to-date information or the most accurate information, Alert Houston does provide accurate, timely, and specific information to Houston. So if anyone is calling from outside of Houston or Harris County, there are a lot of very similar programs. So you may just have to look for one that's specific to your region. But this is specific to those residing in Houston. And again, feel free to look up another alert plan or an alert opportunity that is regional to you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Q&A and discussion portion. I know Kelly and I shared a lot of information, but it was a lot of good stuff. I see a lot of people taking notes and writing things down, so that is wonderful to see. As you still have us here, we've looked into a lot of this. Kelly has attended a lot of different panels and been a part of a lot of different opportunities to learn about this extensively as well. So while you have us, if you do have any clarifying questions, any other concerns, or just have food for thought, please feel free to share it with us.
I have a question
Yes,
for Ashley. I was wondering, when in the very beginning, like when you were talking, you mentioned something about like saving money, and there was something that would benefit you in different ways, like if you saved money, some agency or something. What was
Yes.
that?
So there's a couple of different savings programs. The one that I mentioned was Smarty Pig. So Smarty Pig allows you to link an existing bank account, and through Smarty Pig, you can set specific goals, and they'll send you alerts and reminders and help you keep track of that goal. But they also have regularly occurring, is it raffles, Kelly? Not raffles. It's like different tasks or different kind of things that you can do. I'm explaining this
I think
terribly.
that's Saver Life. That's Saver Life with
Okay.
that has the incentive program.
You're right. That is Saver Life. That is Saver Life. My apologies. Does Smarty Pig do anything in a rewards process?
Smarty Pig has some social media contests every now and then, where they ask you on social media to maybe post what you're saving for, or they have little images of pigs and they ask you to vote on your favorite pig, and you can win contests that way. Not as many as Saver Life though.
Yeah. Save Life is another opportunity that'll allow you to build upon a savings goal. And they do have opportunities where you can be rewarded for certain goals that you meet or certain opportunities that they provide. And then Credit Karma also has a savings program where every month, if you put aside any money, they'll enter you into a raffle. I think it's like a $20,000 raffle that they have. So there's a couple of different savings programs out there that provide different benefits and awarded opportunities.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, we can go ahead to our adjourning and some announcements. So a couple of things that I want to share with you all before we part ways over this wonderful Zoom meeting today is one, as Kelly shared, we do have financial coaching opportunities at the Women's Resource. We have two amazing coaches. They work in addition to helping you build a natural disaster plan, they also work to help you build out any other financial plans that you have or financial goals that you may have in mind in general. So whether you're in a place where you're looking to start savings or want to find additional savings resources, if you want to work on managing any debt, if you want to work towards your credit score or credit goals, they'll be able to help you with everything and anything around the gamut of financial planning and financial goal setting. We also have classes that take place regularly every Thursday. We have 6 different classes that focus on 6 different topics, from saving to budgeting to credit reports and credit scores to debt management, and then to just overall goal setting and planning for larger purchases. So if you're interested in just getting some good general information about any of those specific topics, Kelly, if you don't mind, if you have, that's the one link I didn't put in here was for our classes. But Kelly is going to go ahead and put that link in the chat box, and you can feel free to look through the topics, look through our schedule. Again, they do take place every Thursday. They're going to fluctuate between taking place at 6 p.m. or 3 p.m., but they'll always be on a Thursday. And then if our class times don't work for you, we also have on-demand classes for our first 3 classes, which focus on budgeting, saving, and credit reports. So if you're looking at the schedule and you're thinking, Ashley, these times do not meet with my schedule, I'm doing something at both of these times every Thursday, then we do have on-demand classes that are just readily available. You can go and watch them whenever you're free and whenever you have some time on your hands. And all of our classes are an hour long, so you can put them on while you're making dinner, you can put them on while you're getting ready in the morning, and just get some good knowledge and get some good information around your financial goals and what you want to accomplish regarding your finances. And now I'm going to turn it over to Emily to announce our wonderful raffle prize and then who our lucky winner is for this evening.
Right, thank you, Ashley. Yes, so you may have seen, if you follow us on social media, we have our disaster prep kit as our giveaway prize. I'm gonna put a little link to our Facebook page in the chat where you can see a nice, lovely photo of the kit. It's pretty inclusive, so it has pretty much everything you should need for the basics of your, probably more your stay box as opposed to the go bag, but I think you could, fit it in your trunk if you really needed to. It comes with 2 cases of water, toilet paper, flashlights, batteries, lots of batteries, hand sanitizer, a first aid kit that includes, sanitation products, and a portable phone charger as well. Since we all know having our phone is important, and sometimes if you don't have power, that can be a really great resource. And then lastly, some cards. So if you get bored, you don't have power, you can play a game. So that's everything that we are giving away in the disaster prep box. And it is, I put everybody's name in the wheel of names, and I went ahead and spun it already. So we do have a winner, and that is, congratulations. Congratulations. And as far as getting you the kit, we can coordinate with you about that after today, either today or tomorrow. Either myself or Ashley can get in touch with you.
Thank you, Emily, and congrats. Woo, got a good old stay box. So Kelly just put our event survey in the chat box. If you all could do us a favor and just go ahead and fill out that survey, let us know whether you enjoyed your time with us, didn't enjoy it, whether this was helpful or you wish you had gotten something else out of it. We are open to any and all feedback because we are always learning to learn and grow. And really just be there to continuously serve our community and really understand what all you need from us during this time. So go ahead and fill that out. Give us some good words, some kind words, but also some good critiques as well. But other than that, that is the end of tonight's event. Kelly and I will stay on for a few more minutes just in case anyone has anything to share. But we do truly appreciate all of your time, all of your engagement and activity, and we hope you got something out of this. Kelly, is there any parting words you'd like to share at this time?
Nope, just I hope you learned something new today. I hope that you've got at least one thing that you are going to walk away from today's event saying, I'm going to go do this. in preparation for the next disaster. And just again, to say thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank all of you so much. Stop sharing.